Hey guys, so today you and I are going to talk about hostile interviewers. So let's get into it. So the question in question was, Frederick, I have a question. How to handle an interviewer, a technical interviewer, that is not as friendly as we expected? Well, usually, if you're dealing with someone who is, I would say that this is the common case for people who are, as I like to say, are rude, even though they're unprovoked, like for no apparent reason. Now, the easy answer is, of course, to always go with the naive perspective and say that they probably just have a bad day. So that's a perspective that you can choose, of course, and then you can quote unquote forgive them for the way that they behave. If you want to master that skill, I suggest that you find yourself a few friends who work in the fast food industry or in retailing or like store clerks. Or even better, the best people to talk to are the people who work in the service counters in technical stores and stuff like that, or the call centers. These are also very good people, and ask them for about how they handle being treated like absolute crap by basically every single person who comes in the door, who often are to blame themselves for the problem. And then ask them how they handle a situation where the customer is completely out of their mind, angry over something, and reaching them is really, and getting them to understand that they are actually the problem is the only way to solving the situation. And what's best about that is that you're forced to bridge the ineptness, or like the idiocy, ignorance, or like the personal immaturity of this complete retard of a person, or idiot of a person, so that you can just make progress. And that's, unfortunately, my friend, something that you're going to have to learn how to deal with for the rest of your life. It's very similar to raising children. Uh, if your son or daughter is convinced that they should be allowed to go to school naked, and they will throw a fit over not being allowed to, well, it's the same situation. And in my experience, the best way to deal with people who are either rude for no reason, or especially in a professional environment, or they're incompetent, they're causing frustration because of their incompetency, or anything like that, anyone who's causing tension for no apparent reason. Follow these 3 steps. Smile, a polite smile. Keep calm, and simply answer any questions that they have in as best as you can. And just do that. Don't escalate the situation. Never escalate, because even this is the hard part. You might be completely innocent in all of this, and especially, I mean, if it's an interview, it's actually really risky. But it does not matter. What is important is for you to realize that it is in your best interest to not help fuel the fire between the two of you, no matter how unjust the situation. The thing that you should also consider is if you actually want to work in a place where an interviewer is not, well, not you're not necessarily saying that they're rude here, but not as friendly as expected. If they imagine, I mean, as I said, it could be a bad day, but it can also be an indicator to something worse, the sort of person that you have on the inside. And I've met a lot of people like that. I've worked with tons of people like that who are either incompetent, and usually when they're incompetent, they're so ignorant of their own incompetency that they basically depend on that everybody else is a better person than they are in order for things to work. And so they walk around in this blissful ignorance, where they feel like they're making all the right moves, but the reality is that they're actually shattering the trust and all the stuff that's being built up between the people who are actually competent. And the only reason why they can do that is either because everybody's too nice to actually call them out on their bullshit, or because they have a position. Well, yeah, that's kind of they're not mutually exclusive. They have a position of power or something like that where they don't have to face reality, and usually reality is that they're shitty people. And so when it comes to interviews, what I usually see is that, and it's actually really easy for an interviewer to get there. So what they will do is that you probably don't think about that all that much, but an interviewer will go through a lot of interviews, and they're usually, by the time they've done the interviewing, like the technical interviews for a few months, kind of tired. They start to get complacent about the whole thing and so forth, and so they start forgetting that the person they're talking to is there for the first time. But from there, in their mind, this is just another interview. And that's the most human thing in the world. You repeat something for enough times that you start thinking about it as all the same thing. But it's not the same thing, because you're talking to someone who's never been talking to you before. So if you treat them the same way you treated, well, if your mind tells you that this is just another interview, you're making a mistake. This is a completely new experience. There's a lot of similarities. You're gonna probably ask some questions and so forth, but it's not the same person. And when you start getting into this headspace where you start getting annoyed with people who are, for whatever reason, not the thing that you immediately think this is a good fit, or if you start treating people poorly, you're basically doing the same thing as a really shitty policeman or basically a shitty cop, where you start profiling people too much. Like, there's always a grain of truth to some things, but when you start treating everybody as a criminal, you've been on the force for too long. Honestly, you have, because now you're basically because you unfortunately as a policeman often have to face off against the worst percentages of humankind and deal with all of that. You live in a world where a lot of people are very shitty, and you see a lot of bad things. And if you let that get to you, it starts flowing into other things as well, and it starts affecting your judgment when it's a completely benign situation. And that might be what you're facing. And so by just smiling, keeping calm, usually I find that the best responses, if you're asking questions or things like that, just never waste energy, guys, on snide remarks or people who are hostile, because it can only hurt you. Because if you escalate, then remember, you're talking to an immature person usually, and so you escalate, and now all of a sudden they get angry at you and they go, why the fuck are they so rude? Because they might not even realize that they are the ones who are being shitty to you. And if that's your manager or your boss, it doesn't matter how right you are, because we unfortunately live in a world that is not like the fairy tales where the hero wins. The person who wins is usually the person who has the power, or the person who puts themselves in a good position to actually, to win. And in an interviewing stage, they're just going to fire you, or they're just not going to call you back if you escalate the thing. And it's the same thing when you start working. If you have a really shitty manager or things like that, the best option for you is to follow this principle. And as I like to say, the best response is often to just silence or asking for clarification. These are the best these are the best methods for you, in my opinion, at the very least, to navigate basically any professional situation. Because, as I said, if you escalate, it does not matter if you are right or wrong. You are taking a risk, because just the fact that you are escalating, especially if you escalate a lot of things, and trust me, guys, I've been here 100 times. I've just done basic things like calling out that a person did a pretty bad thing when they very objectively did a bad thing, and everybody agrees on that. The problem is that they then go and report me to their manager, and my manager wasn't in that meeting. So now I have a problem instead. Welcome to professional life, or rather, it's basically all of human society. So what I want you to take away from this is that when you're dealing with someone, an interviewer or someone like that, who is not so friendly or things like that, try to always do the same thing. Smile, a polite smile. Keep calm, and simply answer questions to the best of your abilities. If someone makes a snide remark, be silent. If someone is hostile or asks a hostile question, try to very calmly, without seeming to be dissuasive or hostile back, just respond in a timely, good fashion. and keep calm. And often it's very good to ask for clarification. So when they say something, you kind of go, I'm sorry, could you repeat that? Or I'm sorry, could you explain to me what you mean? I'm not so sure about what you mean. Because if you don't escalate and you keep things at a calm level, either they're gonna calm down, or at the very least you're not gonna step on a landmine by pissing off somebody who is an ignorant idiot who can't treat people nicely even though they haven't done them any harm. Well, you're gonna keep them from blowing their lid, even though they're the one who is in the wrong. Have a great day.